Hello and welcome to this introduction to leadership. Glad you guys could join us today. Before we get started, I want to talk about what we're going to do today and have a little exercise before we get started. So the goal for today is to get you on your path to becoming a great leader in whatever field or job that you may be doing right now. So that's what we're going to be focusing on today, and that's what the majority of the lesson will be. But before we get started, need to make one thing clear. Need to squash a misconception about leadership. Anyone at any time can be a leader. And I'll say that again just to make sure that you got that message. Anybody at any time can be a leader. Right? This is because leadership is not a rank, it's not a position, it's not some entitled gift meant for some people, and some people just are born without it. Being a leader is more about a mindset. It is a decision made, and it's a state of mind. Becoming and being a leader is a choice you make. Without this choice, nobody really has a chance at leadership. But with this choice, when you choose to become a leader, when you choose to say that I am a leader, you're already more of a leader than most people out there already are. Sure, some people are put into positions over other people and directed to lead, and they're expected to lead. But typically, that doesn't make a leader. If this person is put in that position, they still have to make the choice to actually go out there and lead. So before we really get started today, I want you to go ahead right now and tell yourself that you are already a leader, because without this choice, the rest of this lesson really isn't going to do much for you. I can give you lesson after lesson after lesson about leadership and leadership theory and what leadership is all about, but unless you make the choice to be a leader, unless you say to yourself that I am a leader, all that teaching, all those lessons, all that information would really not do much for you. So right now, I want you to tell yourself that I am a good leader. And if you can't believe this right now, just keep on repeating it to yourself until you tell your mind that you are a leader. And hopefully you can overcome all those stories out there about born leaders, or leaders are this magical thing and there's no way you can be a leader, or that you're not a good leader, you'll never be a good leader. No, those are all just bold-faced lies that we either tell ourselves or that other people have told us throughout our entire lives. So let's stop that right now and tell yourself, I am a good leader. And I want you to say it out loud. And I'm not kidding. Do it right now. I am a good leader. All right, good. So now that we believe that we're a good leader, now that we have told ourselves that we're a leader, let's go ahead and give you some tools, some ideas, some concepts about leadership that can start you along this path of becoming a great leader. As we do this, we're going to talk about four main topics today. We're going to talk about what a leader is and the difference between a leader and a coach or a mentor or a manager, which sometimes those get confused. After that, number two, we'll talk about two different approaches to leadership. One is called transactional and one is called transformational. Number three, we'll talk about what, how, and when to delegate. Very, very important task for all leaders. And lastly, we'll talk about effective and honest communication, both with delegation and in your day-to-day communication with those you lead and those who lead you. And within all these topics, you should find ways to motivate and inspire those that you lead. So be on the lookout for those. So we believe we're leaders, but what the heck did we just sign up for? Right now, you could go to Google or any of your favorite search engines and search leadership, and you will find thousands upon thousands of articles out there about leadership. And you could probably spend the next day or week just sitting there and reading through those things. There are a lot of definitions out there. Some of those are about power or control or coercion or all these sometimes terrible images that we put up in our mind. But other ones will be about those great leaders out there who truly transform and inspire and motivate their people. And that's what we're going to look at today. But let me go ahead and give you my definition of leadership. Leadership in its purest form is to love. Nothing more and nothing less. And let me explain that before you just go ahead and tell me that I'm crazy. When I say love, I'm not talking about the romantic type of love shared between two people. Love in this sense, I'm talking about service. I'm talking about compassion. I'm talking about a genuine care for those that you come in contact with. Love is fearless and it's strong. A love of someone will cause you to correct them when they make a mistake because you want them to get better. Love will stop people from taking actions which may cause them or others harm. Love will also push other people and empower those people to better themselves in order to reach their goals and find their own success. This person, this type of leader, this definition of leadership is also going to be willing to pick people back up when they fall and give them support and guide them back onto the path to their own success. So if it's starting to sound like this definition of love that I'm talking about is very, very similar to those great leaders that you've heard about out there, those great leaders who go out of their way to help those that they are around or those that they lead. Those great leaders who take it upon themselves to ensure the success of the people that they lead. Well, this is no coincidence, and that's why I believe and why I say that leadership and love are pretty much the same thing. And go back to my definition that leadership at its purest form is to love, nothing more and nothing less. So let's talk a little bit about some differences between other leadership titles that are out there. And we'll start with managers. So managers, by definition, manage. They manage processes, they manage calendars, they manage product, they manage inventory, they manage people. And they really have a bottom line mindset with the people coming secondary. They're not concerned about the development of their people. They really just are after that bottom line. A coach is someone who will take the time with a student to train them on certain skills or a set of skills to improve their abilities. They definitely show a lot more interest in their students than a manager will, but their job really is just to teach a set of skills. Lastly, we'll talk about a mentor. Now, a mentor and a leader in some cases are the same thing. We'll talk about that in a second. But a mentor's job is the personal development and the personal achievement of those that they mentor. But typically, they're only going to put the effort in and really only going to put the care into mentoring as much as the person that they're mentoring cares or acts. So if the person doesn't really care how much action or mentoring they get, then the mentor will kind of stop mentoring them. So let's talk about how that's different than a leader. Now, you may be, again, telling yourself that I'm crazy because you've known managers or coaches or mentors that are leaders. This is true because great leaders are also managers, coaches, and mentors. They understand these different titles and these different positions and how to employ them at the right time to lead their people. So I would say great leaders are managers, coaches, and mentors, but not all mentors, coaches, or managers are great leaders. So there's kind of the difference between those titles and what a leader is. An additional difference between a leader and a manager or a mentor or a coach is that the leader truly has the success and the love of their people as their true end goal, where the others maybe have different goals or different reasons why they're doing what they're doing. But the leader truly loves those they lead and are truly after the personal success of those they lead. And that's really the difference between the goals and what sets the leader apart from the manager or the coach or the mentor. Next, I also want you to understand that managers or mentors or coaches aren't bad people. Just by that own title, doesn't make them a leader. Now, a manager who has made the choice to also lead and looks after their people and loves their people and is interested in their success, then I would say that they are both a manager and a leader. Same with a coach and same with a mentor. So the key difference is, what's the end goal? What are they trying to get to? Are they trying to get to a bottom line? Are they just trying to do something out of own self-interest? Or are they truly interested in their people and their development? And that's what makes a leader, and you must make that choice to be a leader. Look at it also as that a leader must also understand how to manage. They need to understand how to coach. They also need to understand how to mentor. These are important skills for leaders. But a leader is someone who chooses to love their people and does that through managing, coaching, and mentoring. In the end, a leader is someone who inspires, builds, and looks after the person. They can act as a coach, a mentor, and a manager when the time is right. But their goal and mission is to build additional leaders and help those people reach their own success. So, how does a leader actually lead? Now, there are many different approaches and methodologies and theories out there to explain the best way to do this. Again, you could go on Google and search leadership methodology or leadership approaches and basically read all day long. But I'll give you the two most common and probably the two most basic approaches that kind of all the other ones kind of stem from. First one we'll talk about is the transactional methodology or approach to leadership, also sometimes referred to as the carrot and stick methodology. This is something that you're probably familiar with and something you've seen throughout your life. The transactional approach to leadership is based on incentives and punishments, hence the carrot and the stick. Basically, your whole life, you've probably seen this. The education system, if you do well, you get your A. If you do poorly, then you get your F and go to detention. That's kind of the transactional leadership approach. You've probably seen this in jobs that you've had now or in the past. Possibly your parents use this approach. This approach is used pretty much everywhere. And why? Well, because it works, at least for a certain period of time. This is definitely, in my opinion, not a long-term approach, but it is something that can be effective for short periods. Basically, this approach implies something like if you make $15,000 in sales this month, you'll receive a bonus. And if you don't show up to work in time every day, you'll be reprimanded. That's the basic idea or methodology behind this approach. If you do good, then you get a bonus or get some type of reward. If you don't, then you get punished or some type of reprimand. I'm oversimplifying this approach a little bit, but the basics are enough, and this is probably something that you already understand. There are times where this works, but a couple issues that I have with this approach. First, this approach is results-focused and not people-focused. In my opinion, a truly great leader is someone who's able to inspire, motivate, and empower their people with the knowledge and the faith that these actions will produce results. In the end, you not only have results in this case, but you also have a team of dedicated people who are on their way to becoming leaders themselves instead of staying salespeople forever. Secondly, this approach also disregards the fact that different people are motivated and inspired by different things. What motivates or inspires me or resounds with me may not do the same for you. We both have different motivations, we both have different goals in life, and this approach really only has one approach. If you do X, if you do what we tell you to do, we'll give you the thumbs up. If you don't, then we give you the thumbs down. But that may not motivate me, it may motivate you. So you can get results from this approach. It just depends on who you're talking to and what your team's comprised of. Long term, this doesn't motivate and inspire your people. It doesn't find their strengths and magnify them, and it doesn't find their weaknesses and help to improve them. Big difference between this methodology and what we'll talk about next. So the second approach I want to talk to you about is what's known as transformational leadership. So I'll start off by first saying that when appropriate, the transformational leader can and will employ the transactional style if it's right for the team at the right time. The primary difference here is found in their goal. Their goal isn't the results or the sales figure or whatever it is at the end. It's focused on the people and their development. So if you can use the transactional approach to inspire your team to reach a new goal, with the goal at the end not being whatever their sales numbers are, but them reaching their own goal and feeling empowered and wanting to succeed more, now you're looking more at the transformational approach to leadership. Looking at the team overall, the transformational approach is focused on inspiring your team towards a common goal. And then what you're able to do is actually empower those people to go forth with their leader-enhanced strengths to go ahead and reach the common vision for the team. This type of leader will transform those that they lead by mentoring and coaching them. And in the end, these people will become empowered and confident leaders themselves, which will only produce more leaders and more success for you and your team. So now the question is, how does a transformational leader empower their people? Well, empowerment begins with trust, and that trust must begin with the leader. So for example, if a leader was to delegate a task to someone who they lead, trust must be built within that relationship. The leader must trust the person with a responsibility with that task and truly believe that that person can accomplish that task correctly. The person being delegated the task must trust that the leader trusts them to get the task done. They must also trust that the leader is not going to set them up for failure, and they're not going to give them a task in which they cannot perform and in the end destroy the trust between the two. And within that delegation from the leader to those they lead, you start building trust over and over and over. And in time, the people below you will start coming up with new ideas because they feel empowered to do so. They feel that the leader will trust their word. They feel that when they come to the leader with a new idea, it will be accepted. And they feel motivated and inspired to go out and do great things because they feel empowered to go do so. When we get into the delegation portion of this lesson, we'll talk more about how improper delegation or lack of delegation can destroy this trust and therefore destroy the empowerment of those you lead. And in the end, you're no longer leading people, you're managing people because you don't have their success or their development in mind. Now, as mentioned, this discussion of empowerment can lead us directly into the other major topics of this lesson, which are delegation and communication. As just mentioned, empowerment begins with entrusting somebody with a task, which is the basic definition of delegation. The concept of delegation is simple to understand, but the practice of it is where many leaders fall on their face. Two common mistakes in delegation are flat out not delegating or only delegating menial tasks or tasks that don't even matter. Failure to delegate or only delegating these menial tasks results from the belief that you are the only person in the entire world who can accomplish this task to your high standards. You're basically telling the people that you're leading that you either think that you're better than them or they're too incompetent to possibly perform the task accurately. I'll let your imagination picture how this type of leader is not a leader at all. What's really foolish is that in addition to this breakdown of trust, the failure to delegate also drives you, the leader, crazy because you're trying to manage and keep track of or organize too many tasks. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. You're destroying the trust between you and those you lead, and you're also making yourself way more busy and task saturated than you really need to be. So in the end, not delegating stresses you out and makes your people think that you don't trust them or they're not as good as you. If this sounds awesome to you, then please close this video right now and get back to work because I'm sure that you have a lot of work to do. Okay, now let's take a step back real quick and look at where we are within this lesson. Okay, not that far. We now believe that we are leaders because we have made the decision to be leaders. We have chosen to love those we contact and lead because this love will be the driving force behind a focus on the development and the empowerment of those that we lead. Results are not the end state, but rather an effect following these inspired and transformed people. In order to develop and empower these people, we see that a critical step is the importance of delegation and the trust that it builds. This trust turns into empowerment over time, and you now have motivated and inspired people. So, moving on in the lesson, how do you effectively delegate? Well, first, you must determine what to delegate. Now, at this point, I need you to play a bigger role in the success of this lesson. Since I do not necessarily know you or your business, I cannot give you a list of what to delegate. I need you to create this list for yourself. But don't worry, I'll do what I can to help you build that list. The first step is to literally make a list of the tasks that make up your business on a day-to-day basis. What do you have to do? Do you need to contact clients, set up and have meetings, track inventory, maintain a database, enter orders, ship products, etc.? Go ahead and brainstorm what tasks you actually have to do on a daily basis. Also consider how often you need to do these tasks. How long does each task take? Which ones do you absolutely hate doing? Remember, no task is too small to add to the list. Okay, now that you have your list, or if you didn't make your list yet, it's okay, we can move on. Maybe making a list can be the first thing on your list. Now, look at the list and identify which of your tasks are the tasks that only you can do. And I mean only you. While you struggle to let go and rationalize why you have to do all these tasks, let me offer some ideas. Identify the 1 to 5 tasks that are the tasks that you can do and will help the team the most if you accomplish them the best. Remember, however, that you are not bottom line focused, but people focused. What can you do that will bring the most success to your team, both in results and in the development of your team? For example, as the leader of a team, a task you must focus on is the strategic and long-term development of those you lead. This is a task that you should not delegate. But you could delegate the training of a specific task or skill to an outside instructor or to one of your team members who has excelled at that skill. Go ahead and delegate the training of that task instead of developing yourself, but do not delegate the responsibility of long-term development of your team. Eventually, you may build one of your team members into a leader and you can give them a team of your own. At that point, you could delegate the responsibility of development for the people they lead to them. But their development, their continued success is still a task that you must take on as the leader. For example, you could take time to develop and coach them through the development of their team. This leads us into effective delegation, which begins with communication. I'll start this part of the lesson off with a quote from General George Patton. He says, "Never tell people how to do things. Tell them what to do, and they will surprise you with their ingenuity." Within this quote is the difference between effective delegation and micromanagement. Nobody enjoys being micromanaged, so how do you avoid this as a leader? Looking at General Patton's quote, it will tell you, telling people how to do something will stifle their creativity and their strengths. Telling them how to do something will cause them to stay within a box, and it will be frustrating to them and cause them to feel untrusted. Instead of doing this, just tell them what needs to be done. So how do you do this? Through effective communication. Now, the concept of communication is often misunderstood. Most people think communication is very easy because we do it all the time. I'm communicating to you right now. You communicate with your family and your friends and strangers every single day. But effective communication goes a step further. And this is the kind of communication that you want with those that you lead. Truly effective communication starts with you and your planning. Many times while trying to delegate tasks, leaders do not clearly communicate what they need done. Then when the task is complete and it comes back to the leader, they're upset with the result, and they mistakenly believe that the person that they delegated this task to is incompetent, or they made a mistake, or they can't be trusted. But the problem is actually not with the person, but with the way that the leader communicated. So before you attempt to delegate, or more clearly, before you try to communicate anything effectively, you need to plan what you need to say. What is the goal of your communication? What critical things must you communicate? What could be misinterpreted about what you plan to say? If you truly know your people, you can usually predict what the response or their confusions or motivations will be. With this information, you can craft your message in a way that it will be clearly understood by those that you're trying to communicate it to. So before you try to communicate anything with your team or with anybody individually, for effective communication, sit down and actually create a plan or write out what you want to say. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a sentence or a paragraph or bullet points or whatever works for you. But have an idea of what needs to be said, what could be misinterpreted about what you're going to say, and then change your message to make sure that it will be clearly understood by whoever you're trying to talk to. Now also remember that communication is mostly the nonverbal parts of the communication. What is actually said is usually not the whole of the communication. It's your tone of your voice, it's the face that you're making, it's the body language that you're sending to whoever is listening. So think about that and what message needs to be sent, and think about what means of communication. And by that I mean, do you need to communicate this in person? Is it better in a phone call or a text or Facebook or Skype? Or what's the best way to actually get this message across? Because sometimes just the text message could be misinterpreted because the tone or the body language or the facial expressions aren't there. So think about not only the message, but by what means are you going to actually try to communicate. Next, when you actually are delivering the message, make sure that you're being very direct and also very clear. For example, I'm going to go through a scenario where I talk to a guy named John, and I'm his leader and he's the person being led, and I'm going to delegate him a task. So I'll just go through this scenario. Hey John, I need you to help me take care of something for our team. I need you to create a database template in order to track inventory. I remember you talking about how much you liked working with numbers and databases, and I think your skills with this can have a massive impact on everybody on our team. Does this sound like something you could work for us? And John would say, sure, I'd love to. Now I'd say, awesome. So what we need to do is create a database that is user-friendly, because not everybody is as good with databases and numbers as you are. Something that will accurately keep track of the quantity and value of their personal inventory. And it needs to be something that will be able to create a printable report for this data. I'd like to have this done in about 2 weeks. Is that something that's doable? And John would say, yeah, I think I can make that happen. And I'd say, sounds good. So what I'm going to do is I'll check in with you in about a week to see if you have any questions or if you want to run any ideas by me to make sure we're still on the same page. Outside of that, please let me know how it's going, or if you have any questions in the meantime. Is that cool? So within this imaginary situation, there are some key points. First, I made this project about the team, and I did not say it was for me because it isn't. Also, people tend to get more motivated with the thought of helping a larger amount of people versus doing a favor for just one. Next, I discussed that building databases was something John already liked doing, and that I know it was one of his strengths. He now knows that I have complete trust in him that he can get this job or this task done. After he confirmed my assumption about this, I went into the details of what was needed. I told him what I needed, but allowed him to figure out how to actually make it happen. This is now empowering him by understanding what I need, but he has complete creative control to go work on his strengths and make something that probably anybody could make, but maybe not as good as he could. And then lastly, I discussed the timeline for the project, basically to set a deadline. I told him I would check in with him in about a week to make sure that he was still on the same page as me. And then lastly, I left the door wide open for any future communication from him to me. This last part is very important and is often overlooked. By telling him I would check in with him in a week, when I actually do that, he will expect it. If I didn't say this when I did check up on him in a week, he would think that I didn't trust him or that I forgot that we had discussed 2 weeks as the deadline. Doing this can cause frustration and animosity over the project or worse, between us. Also, by leaving the door open for any future questions, he knows that he can reach out to me anytime and he won't be bothering me. He can also feel safe to let me know where he is having problems with the project or that he may need an extension on the deadline. Speaking of deadlines, this brings up an important point with communication. Many new leaders find the act of holding people accountable and honestly communicating poor performance very difficult. Honestly and directly communicating poor performance is essential. Let's say you and someone on your team had a great meeting to set up their goals for the upcoming month. You discuss the goals they want to set, why they want to set them, and their plan to achieve them. You learn within this meeting why they want to succeed and why it's important to them. You've also expressed to them that their success was important to you because you truly want them to succeed. Remember our leadership is love conversation? Then, later in the month, you see that this person is not following their plan and they're not going to reach their goals. This is when you must have that tough conversation. You must express your concern, and your concern is for that person. You know why they want to succeed, and you care as much about their success as you do about yours. Reach out to them and find out what is going on. Why are they not following their plan? Express to them that you want them to succeed, and therefore you will push them to reach their goals. You are leading them to get what they say they want. Most importantly, you must find out what you can do to help them. One of your jobs as a leader is to remove obstacles in the way of success of your team. By removing obstacles or aiding in overcoming them, empowering your team to succeed, and then supporting their efforts, your team will surprise you in their ability, imagination, and ingenuity in accomplishing and possibly surpassing their own goals. And if everyone on your team is meeting or surpassing their goals, then your team will feel successful, they will feel motivated and empowered, and this will lead to more and bigger success in the future. Looking back at what we've talked about, we have defined leadership and different approaches to it. You can now follow the carrot and stick method, but I think you will be better suited to follow the transformational approach. Lastly, we discussed delegation, the importance of it, and along with the importance of both effective and direct, honest communication. The last thing I will leave you with is this. Most of what we discussed today was just the tip of the iceberg of leadership. I encourage you to continue studying this art. You can search Google or YouTube, find thousands of videos and articles that help you along your way. There are also thousands of books of leadership out there. What I talked to you about today is the result of my study of these resources and the experiences I've had the pleasure and opportunity to have leading people. If you can walk away with only one thing from this video, I want it to be the belief that you are a leader because you have decided to be. Once you have made this decision, once this is your mindset, I will not need to convince or motivate you anymore to learn more skills or knowledge about how to lead. You will do this because of your belief in yourself and because you truly want to better yourself in order to help those you love and those you lead to achieve their own personal success and live their dreams. Now, go out there and lead somebody.